I know you can't believe this. It's me. It's Dan. I'm here. We're back for a one-off Tomorrow Society podcast. I don't know if I'd even call this an official episode. I'm not giving it an episode number. This doesn't mean the show is back for good. This is just one of those things where, I haven't done a show since early this year. And I've been to a lot of parks. And I'm not going to just give a trip report. I just have some bigger thoughts. I am going to talk about each park I went to. I went to 4 Six Flags parks. Now, 2 of them didn't used to be Six Flags. They were Kings Island and Worlds of Fun. But I also went to Six Flags Great America and Six Flags St. Louis, my hometown park. Also went to Silver Dollar City. So I've been to a lot of parks this year. No Disney parks. And the timing on this one is interesting, too, because Six Flags just announced some really bad earnings results. Now, I'm not a financial expert. I'm not really here to talk about any of that at all. It does connect, I think, too, to the larger issues in the theme park industry and what they're dealing with just getting guests and getting happy guests and getting them to spend money. I'm going to talk about some things that I observed. And again, this is really just from my own personal experience going to these parks and things I think they could improve. But also before that, I'm going to talk about Disney because I haven't talked about any news that's come out since January, basically. And there's been a lot of new attractions. Now, granted, I haven't experienced them in person, and some I've purposely not watched. Others I have, like Test Track, for example. But I have some thoughts about things they've done. And also, I know their attendance has been soft. So I want to talk about that too, because I feel like it's very easy to look at like one factor and say, it's just because people are mad at Disney. It's too expensive. They closed this. They did this. And that's part of it. But there are other things that are part of it too. This is kind of like an old school Tomorrow Society Bulletin episode for those of you who are patrons. I figured it'd be fun to check in. This is a case where there's not really any expectations for me personally, like, oh, now I'm going to start doing episodes all the time. No, this is just something I thought would be fun to put together. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about it if you do listen to my lengthy ramblings, but it's just an update to say, hey, here's what I've been doing this year. I didn't disappear. I have been spending a lot less time on social media, which I think is a healthy thing overall, and will continue to do that, but thought it would be fun to check in here with you, talk about some bigger topics in the world of theme parks and beyond, especially pertaining to Disney, and then also, like the title of the episode mentions, a lot of Six Flags, because I feel like it's very easy to just talk about Disney and Universal, but I think some of the things Six Flags is doing are interesting, but also I think are kind of self-defeating in a way. And it can be very tricky when you're talking about psychology with what you charge for certain things and don't charge for others. So we're going to dive into all that. If it sounds like something fun that you would like to hear, if you're like, I haven't heard from Dan in a while, this might be fun. I would love for you to hang out with me for an hour, probably more than an hour. And this isn't an official Tomorrow Society podcast episode with a number and everything. But I mean, come on, I got to play the music. So before we dive in any further, you are listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Here we go. It's so much fun to be back talking about theme parks with you again. I've really missed it, though part of me has also enjoyed just the mental space. But the good thing about this time is there's a lot to talk about, just starting with Disney, because I think we have to start with Disney. And some of the things I'm talking about with Disney, though, will also carry over to my personal experiences at the regional parks. To talk about Disney, I want to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. I promise you we'll get back to it quickly. So the St. Louis Cardinals have been a very successful baseball franchise that is beloved by many people in St. Louis, and then there are fans all over the country. It annoyed people. They were kind of, for a while, kind of like the Patriots or, one of those franchises that people are just like, I'm so sick of hearing about them. Think of how you feel about the Yankees. That kind of idea. But now they don't even really get talked about much. That is not great for them, but it also has carried over into attendance. It came up this past weekend where the Cardinals had the New York Yankees in town, which normally would have led to big crowds and did not. And so the national media kind of picked up on this because the Cardinals really haven't drawn this year or last year, going back to several years. They had a really bad year in 2023 where they were just terrible. The worst they've been since I can remember, probably since the early 1990s. That is one reason attendance is down. But they were actually okay last year, and they started out good this year, and still no one came. I think the big thing there, one, people are frustrated with the leadership. They hate their messaging. They don't like the PR. And also, they're just not inspired. And I think in today's modern era of entertainment, following the pandemic and everything else that I'm going to get into, people need to be inspired or excited more by their entertainment than maybe they were. Sure, you could throw something on TV, whatever. But for you to leave your house, go out, maybe make a trip, take a plane flight, drive, you need to have more inspiration. Now, if I'm talking about the Cardinals, most people aren't making plane flights, but some people drove hours to see them. It was a big thing. So the Cardinals are struggling, I think, with not just with winning and losing. Sure, if they were had won 100 games this year or something, they would draw big. But the fans just aren't inspired. They don't believe in the leadership, and they're bored by the team. So even when the team wins, fans have this, well, this isn't going to last. And I mention all this because I think it has permeated how a lot of people likely feel about Disney. Disney was always known as kind of being recession-proof. Now, granted, they were hit very hard by 9/11. And of course, way back, they were hit by the gas shortage in the 70s, but I was not alive basically during that. But during 9/11 and for years after, with the tourism industry down, they were hit hard. But the typical smaller blips don't have as much effect, especially on Walt Disney World, as they do on a lot of other entertainment offerings. And one of the reasons for that is people's personal connection to Disney and to the parks. And that's why I mentioned the Cardinals, because a lot of people have this personal connection. And the Cardinals are not unique. There are sports franchises like that all over. And I think a lot of people just feel like me personally, I've been to one game this year, and actually my dad bought the tickets. And even when they've been good, I'm just not that inspired by it, and I don't feel a strong connection to it. Part of that might just be getting older and not feeling the same connection to a sports franchise. But with Disney, I still feel that connection, but I understand that maybe that inspiration and connection is not as strong with some based on just a lot of different factors, which can be into. People still may like a lot of the movies and may consider themselves fans of the parks. It doesn't mean they throw their Disney shirts in the trash or cut up their Spirit jerseys. But those are too expensive. You can't do that. But basically, what are they focusing on with their entertainment dollars and their time, but especially their dollars and what they're deciding to do. So here's the factors, because Disney, of course, if you aren't aware, has had a slow attendance summer. Now, I'm not really talking numbers in this case. I like to use numbers, but the attendance numbers, one, aren't reported for a while, but also, they get reported with quarterly earnings calls. But the public attendance reporting that is done that most people cite that typically talks about the year previously and lists like the top 25 parks, those are reported by the parks. So it's a little weird in that, yes, I assume they're pretty accurate, but they are, you don't really have a way to verify it. So I always find myself a little hesitant to use those. But let's talk about what are the reasons, because again, it's very easy for me to look at what's happened with Disney and slow attendance in the summer and just say, wow, the sky's falling. They're done. Part of it is there's a lot of different factors that go into it. The obvious one is weather. Summer has gone down in terms of crowds for years. And the main reason is Florida. I'm talking especially about Florida is brutal, and climate change, I hate to say it, is making things worse. It's not just, I've noticed it here at St. Louis. I'm like, gosh, I don't remember there being days where I don't even want to go outside. And then I try to be active and play tennis and do something. You try to swim in your local pool, swim laps, and it's like brutal. I think there are people that have gone during the summers and just been like, I can't. I know the kids are out of school and everything. Florida's always been hot. But I do feel like the difference, you can even jump 5 degrees or whatever from over a period of time. And I know different days, you can look at any particular day and say, oh, well, that was cold or whatever. But climate change has had an effect. And I also just think in general, people learned that they had better experiences going different times of year. So then you have things like spring breaks or fall breaks, Christmas break, holiday weekend, you see President's Day, all that. So that's had an impact over the summer. Also, these are large-scale trends that go beyond this year. But it does seem like each year people say, wow, I've never seen it this empty. I've never seen this empty. I think part of it is just people shifting to other times. Also, this year, Disney does not have this massive draw that's going to bring everyone in. Yes, Magic Kingdom got a new parade. Cool. Test Trek came back. Awesome. We've got new shows at Hollywood Studios. Great way for capacity. We've got new lounges, Spaceship Earth Lounge. Like 10 people can go inside it, But essentially, there's not a big draw on par with your past Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, Tron, even Tiana's, which I know was replacing Splash Mountain, but you still had a bigger draw. This year is more smaller scale changes, some that have been very well done, but are not going to move the needle. If people are already hesitating to go to Walt Disney World, there's nothing that really pushes them over the top. Of course, you have to mention Epic Universe. In Epic Universe, it's hard to see exactly how popular it's been because they've been capping attendance, which is a smart thing to do in its first year because you don't want to have a situation where they're mobbed and then people have terrible experiences. That can hurt a park for years. So they've been capping attendance. Again, I haven't watched the Ministry of Magic or Monsters Unchained POVs because I feel like those are the two that I want to go in cold, kind of like I was with Radiator Springs Racers and Rise of the Resistance. I want to go in cold for those. So I haven't watched those. Everything I can see, it looks like a really cool park. The theming looks great. I have heard it can be very challenging in the rain because so many of the rides shut down or outside. Stardust Racers looks awesome, on par, maybe with Velocicoaster, which to me jumped to my number one roller coaster when I rode it earlier this year. So I think Epic Universe started amazingly. Yes, there are some issues that people have talked about, including some of the rides not being as exciting and also being really hot. The same deal we have with all these parks where there's not enough shade when they open. It's going to get there. They're going to expand. I think it's going to get there, but that has probably played a role. Even if Universal just drew, with the attendance caps, an extra so many thousand people per day, let's say a few thousand of those were going to go to Magic Kingdom and instead went to Epic Universe for their day, or 2 days or whatever. That can make a difference in how Disney feels in terms of crowds. It may not hit at the end of the year. You won't go, oh my gosh, Magic Kingdom failed. But in the summer, especially when Epic Universe opened in May, in the summer, you may see some impact. Now, it's hard to gauge how much because even Universal hasn't seen huge crowds from what I've heard at their other parks. But I think that's just a Central Florida thing. And that gets me to my next point, which is the economic struggles. Yes, you could cite a certain statistic and say the economy is great, but look around. Things just cost more. Groceries cost a lot. You go to even your fast food, something that was $8 is now $10. Gas, gas is kind of fluctuating, but overall, it seems like things tend to just cost more. Now, you combine that with maybe uncertainty in the economy for a variety of reasons. And again, I'm not going to get really far into politics at all here. But obviously, for me personally, who is in charge of the country can impact how I feel about the economy. For others, it may have the opposite effect, so I don't know how much to weigh in on that. In the past few years, I think especially because of rising inflation, which I think is a bigger issue in terms of people's uncertainty even than who's leading. Things cost more. People are not getting increases at their job for the most part that are on the same level as that, so that's going to hit. Also, you have uncertainty with things like tariffs, and are they still going to hit in the future? And just how is that going to impact everything? And this does connect big to the expense of the Disney trip. So I know this is one that some people will say is the only reason. Things are so expensive, whether it's the tickets that are high, Genie Plus, which you didn't pay for years ago, hotels, add-ons, everything else, airfare being high. Even if let's say you're driving down, you stay at your Holiday Express or whatever, more expensive than it used to be by $20-$30, whatever. Everything adds up, especially for families. The expense of a Disney trip can really get there. This connects, of course, to what I said about inspiration, because I feel like a subpar Disney trip, let's say you go and you pay your money. Disney isn't going to really know unless they survey you. And let's say you do a trip, family of 4, I'll just throw out a number, let's say $4,000. It may be less, maybe more, depending on how many days, and if you stay at Pop Century versus Contemporary or Offsite or whatever. Let's say $4,000. And you pay it, and you don't have a great experience. You're still paying that money. Disney is still getting your money. Maybe you decide, hey, we were going to go back next year. why don't we do something else instead? Or why don't we do several smaller trips? Why don't we just stay around town? And that connects also to economic uncertainty. Because if you're like, yeah, my job doesn't feel as secure as it once was, okay, I'm not going to spend as much. Disney keeps getting more expensive. But if you go and you spend the money and it is blow you away, incredible, you're going to be like, I know my job's a little uncertain, but we can swing it right now. Let's do it again next year because we need this. This was so amazing. We'll do it again. So if people aren't having that amazing experience, which I know some people are, my last trip was great in 2024. If people aren't having that experience, it stands out when the expenses are high and when maybe the economy is not what it once was. You're paying more for everything you spend. Not just at Disney. I'm talking about your eggs, your bread, your everything. When you go to a movie, whatever. If you're spending more on everything, what Disney costs stands out even more. Also, people maybe be traveling more locally because, there's a lot of things to see. I've noticed it in my local area or national parks or everything around. Maybe when you do go and you spend that money and you go, was that really worth it? Hey, why don't we just do this trip where we go to this national park? Okay, maybe we'll stop at an amusement park from St. Louis. Let's go to Solar City. Let's go here. Let's come back. Oh, we spent $1,200. Whatever, just throwing out a number. It makes a difference. So for me, to sum up this thing, and then I'll talk about a few of the attractions from what I've thought about them. I think they're in okay shape. I think a lot of the issues are related to issues facing the larger entertainment industry on the whole. You're seeing this. I went to see Fantastic Four: First Steps. We went on a Tuesday, which is Marcus Theater, which is a local theater, has like $6 tickets, which is like less than half. And they give you free popcorn. The place was mobbed. Now, people are just smart. They're like me. They're going at the right time. And this has been the case all the time. You have the cheaper movies, people are going to go. But I think that the biggest issues there are climate change and the economy. And I think Disney can only do so much. However, there are a lot of levers they can pull. They've done it already with things like free dining and discounts and everything else. But you remember after 9/11, around that time, or when they've struggled in the past, they had these offers like buy 4 days, give 3 days free, or even, dining offers that were better than they were now in terms of, what you could get with it, a package that was better. There are things they can still do. Now, I know they don't want to do them, but there are things they can do that might have an impact. It's interesting to me because I feel like a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about that I saw at Six Flags connect to, in a way, how people feel about Disney. If people love your product, they will I don't want people to do this, don't get me wrong. They will put things on credit cards. They will scrimp everywhere else to pay for that Disney trip. If people feel like they like your product, that it's good, but they can get a 80% experience somewhere else that's half the price. Like something like Dollywood is a good example that often gets used, or Silver Dollar City, or other, even places like Cedar Point or Kings Island or whatever, which are not cheap. But if they can get a 70% experience, if you're Disney, you want people to think there's nothing like us, not even at Universal. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying that's true, but that's what they need to be thinking about. So let's talk about a few things that they've done here, because I do want to dive into Six Flags before we're too far down this road. I like talking about this, and I haven't talked about it for a while. Home run, from what I could tell based on YouTube, is Test Track 3.0. You know me, I haven't talked about it much yet, but as the Tomorrow Society, the way that name came from, if you are someone who somehow is brand new to this podcast and you're like, why is this called Tomorrow Society? It's because I grew up being really into like the futuristic side of Disney. I would go and I was so into the monorails. I loved Epcot Center. My first trip there was in 1984 when I was 8 years old. Talk about perfect. And when I say I'm into that, I don't mean that I'm one of those people that says Epcot shouldn't change. I do love the vibe, but I also love the vibe like I love Star Trek or, something like that, where it's just like, this looks like a cool place to be, and this looks like cool technology for the future. And wouldn't it be fun if we had all these things, and maybe some of these technologies could help with some of the problems of the world, that types of things. And that brings me to Test Track 3.0, which I know Disney said, it's going to pay tribute to World of Motion, which I was a little skeptical of because I always think when they say that, it's like, we're going to have Mr. Toad giving the plaque in Winnie the Pooh or something like that. But no, this did, from what I can gather and what I've also heard from people that have written it, like Skipper Ben on the Marty Called podcast mentioned this, is that it does have real Epcot early Epcot vibes. It still has the speed. It's still a thrill ride. It still has a lot of the elements that people like about the previous Trust Track, though I know my daughter very upset that they are not allowing you to design the car anymore. But I get it. That technology, while amazing, never worked as well as it would seem, was really showing its age. So I think there was a point where like, okay, I think we're done with this. So I like the idea that it maintained that, but it looked to add a lot of sets. It has new narrators. It has kind of a silliness to it. And then they have this speed room, basically right before you shoot out outdoors. They have this screen they've put up, which reminds me of the speed rooms, which, oh my gosh, the speed rooms I loved at World of Motion. They also had them in If You Had Wings and Dreamflight. They had them in the Disneyland People Mover. Oh my gosh. They still, if you want to know like what that's like, it's like Buzz Lightyear. That last moment where you're shooting the things flying around, that's kind of what it was like. That one isn't really designed to simulate motion like speed rooms are. And this is futuristic. It does remind me a little bit of the movie Tomorrowland. Looks so awesome. So awesome. Now, I say this as someone who's really into like futuristic stuff. I'm not that excited about the Spaceship Earth Lounge GO82 just because it seems so expensive and so hard to get reservations. I haven't even been to Space 220 because it's so expensive, and I would love to just go check it out. But it seems to be just too much. However, the views look awesome. So if somebody could just like lead me in there, I'd buy a drink, just to see the view once and everything else. So that's fine. I'm not a DVC member, so I can't really get to the Frontier Shooting Gallery Lounge that we replaced that. But, I've heard it's really cool. Again, just keep mentioning Skipper Ben, but he also talked about that too. And I know they had the silliness with the reservations for the Beacon Barrel, the Pirates Bar. That'll get it figured out. It's fine. I like that they're going to use the space for something interesting. It gives people something else to do, but I suspect, again, it's going to be really hard to get in there, though I've heard, Oga's used to be that way, but not as much, and the drinks are going to be insanely expensive. Things I'm less excited about, even though these are not new announcements. Closing of Muppet Vision, I still feel like I wish there was a way they could have saved it. It was such a cool attraction. My daughter and my wife have been going and watching all these old Muppet shows. They went through the entire Muppet show. They've gone through every iteration. They've watched a bunch of Jim Henson things like The Storyteller and a bunch of things Jim Henson worked on, The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, everything else well into the weeds. This is devastating to them, though I think both are excited about the Electric Mayhem being in place of Rock and Roller Coaster whenever that happens, because my daughter really liked Muppets Mayhem, that show, and really into music. So that's pretty cool. Thing that guts me much more than that is Rivers of America, which I know I talked about when they announced it after D23, and I had a separate episode because at first it didn't seem clear, and then they threw it into a blog post. And I defend Disney on a lot of things, and I think people are a little alarmist or whatever. So one, I think the closing of Rivers of America, I understand it. I think the Cars area will ultimately look really cool. I think when it's all done and there, it's going to be a cool area. I understand. I don't go to Tom Sawyer Island much. We went to the Pirates version at Disneyland, and I had been there for years, and it was fun, but I get it. I just really enjoyed that riverboat, and I felt like, especially at the Magic Kingdom, Magic Kingdom to me, I never find as relaxing as some do, because I always find it to be a little hectic and things are breaking. And it's just, I find Epcot and the Animal Kingdom so much more relaxing to visit. So I found that riverboat to be one of those areas, even more than the railroad, because it stops and you wait forever and everything else. The riverboat to be just this kind of oasis, this area where you could just chill and it was never that crowded, and you could see Frontierland, you could see the Haunted Mansion, and it used to be Splash and now Tiana's. See all these areas, but from a comfortable place. There was always a good breeze, and that I know it's still at Disneyland, but that's still tough for me. And especially seeing it now torn up and gutted, you see things. I watch a lot of live streamers, especially Resort TV One and Ron on the Go. That's kind of my way to stay connected to the parks. I mean, sometimes it's like, how many times do they have to go on the same attraction or watch Fantasmic? I mean, come on, guys. But I really appreciate the service they provide. I mean, I hate to say a service because it is, they're getting money in various ways. But to me, they're basically beyond me watching the ads. They're just providing a service. One, I appreciate that they rode like the riverboat so much near the end, but also seeing shots now. I think it was Resort TV did the shots, and I was just like, oh my God. So that is sad. So, to kind of sum up about Disney, I mean, I know they've also had the new villain show. I did not watch that. Same with the Little Mermaid show. Also wanted to mention they are putting something into animation, or basically into where the launch bay was, kind of going back to animation. I'm good with that. Something else for people to do. It's mostly going to be meet and greets. It's all good. I'm cool with that. It's not going to blow me away. I'm not going to overthink the idea like, oh, it's just like the original. No. Because the original at MGM Studios, they had animators there for a pretty short period of time, but I think it's better than just having this out-of-date Star Wars area that's hardly ever open. So I think it's good that they're doing that. I'd like to see a lot more of that at all the parks, just more things to do and things you can put in quickly versus having to take 5, 6, whatever many years to build a Villain's Land or to put in things for Encanto and everything else. Before I finish, I also mentioned the Walt animatronic. I think people are losing their minds on this one. I think, again, maybe it's going to look worse in person, but typically things like that look worse on YouTube. I think it's fine. I think the expectations for this were so high that there was no way Disney was going to win with the Walt animatronic. Yes, the actual lines they chose for him to give seem a little odd, but I also haven't seen the full film narrated by Bob Iger, of all people. But, Walt Disney's best friend, Bob Iger. No, but all seriousness, I think it's fine. I like that as long as Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln then gets rotated eventually, and not like Impressions to France rotation, like an even rotation. I think this seems like a respectful show to Walt. I don't have a big issue with it. I think, again, the reaction online, well, I agree with certain reactions, especially about the Rivers of America in a lot of ways, though even those have gotten way unhinged. The Walt one doesn't really bother me, and I understand what they were trying to do, and I think people that made it really had care for what they wanted to do. And, I have no idea what he looked like in person. Seeing him on TV doesn't show that completely. I think it's fine. Maybe when I see it in person, I'll have different ideas. But just to sum up with Disney, it's interesting. Now, I haven't followed the day-to-day or even week-to-week as closely with not doing this podcast. But I will say it is really interesting to kind of see what they're doing and how they're evolving. And like, for example, right now, unless things changed, as of this recording, just to tell you, I'm recording this at the moment on August 18th. Disney does not have a theme park presentation that is going to happen at Destination D23. That surprises me, but I kind of get it. Because if they don't have anything big to announce, or if the things they're announcing are more like this animation update or things like that, maybe it's not worth coming out and taking the heat. Now, I think if that is the reason, can't you just go out there and celebrate the parks and then give some updates? But I think they think that there's no way they can come out and not. People are always going to expect something grand. But there are a lot of things they just kind of hinted at D23. Like if you spin it more like, hey, I'm here and I'm going to give you updates on everything that we've been doing, maybe you can do it. I would still love to see more updates, even on some of the like Spider-Man attraction in Hong Kong and things like that. I'd love to learn more about that. And I think Destination D23 is a good place to do it, but I kind of get it. If they're really not willing or not ready to make any big announcements and they want to make D23 even bigger in terms of announcements, maybe it makes more sense, but it does show kind of a caution about what they're doing that they've had kind of this year, and I think it's probably going to continue going forward. And they already started the Halloween parties. That always gets me every time. But I end up, again, with a lot of credit to the live streamers, I end up watching that parade, the Boo to You parade, which I like quite a bit. Not in person, but I've seen it quite a bit online. But I want to transition. It's funny. We're about a half hour in. Now let's talk about the main topic of the episode. So like I said, I want to talk about what I've been doing this year and some of my thoughts based on those experiences. So total, I went during this year, this is not counting Universal, where we went in January, and I basically caught up with everything I hadn't done at Islands of Adventure and at Universal Studios Florida. I did an episode about that. If you haven't heard it, it's a trip report that I released right before the end, but that was very fun to put together. So we're talking about for the rest so far. I mean, again, we're recording this in August. I do have my pass for Six Flags through the end of the year. I could go to another park. Now, I don't know. I went to a lot of these with my daughter, and she has started school, so it might be something solo. And I'm also in a factor where I've hit all the parks that are like in the 4 to 5 hour range away from me. If I'm going to go to any other parks I haven't already done this year that are under this pass, you're talking 7-8 hours. You're talking Michigan's Adventure, Valley Fair. You are talking Cedar Point, but that's also one I kind of like to do with my daughter because she loves coasters so much. So I don't think I would do Cedar Point solo just because I would want to do that kind of with her. But again, to summarize, the parks that I visited this year: Silver Dollar City over spring break, Six Flags St. Louis in May, Kings Island in June, Six Flags Great America in early August, and then a little later in August, Worlds of Fun. That is also where my brother lives in Kansas City, so we went with his family. Also went and rode a mountain coaster at the Aries Resort in Grafton, Illinois. I'll mention that briefly. Went in July. So total did 34 roller coasters, 13 that I had not ridden previously. So I'd ridden quite a few previously. The only park that was entirely new to me was Worlds of Fun. But again, I spent more time at these. Like, for example, Six Flags Great America, I went to in 2022. I did a podcast about that, but I was only there from about 9:30 in the morning until about 1:30 in the afternoon. So it was only about 4 hours where I did, I think, 6 coasters and Justice League. This time we were there for a half day, then a full day, then another morning. So we were there for much longer. Kings Island, we also did over several days, similar to Silver Dollar City. So we spent more time at some of these parks than the others. Now, Silver Dollar City, I'm going to mention briefly because I've done multiple podcasts about Silver Dollar City and given my thoughts about it. So I'm going to talk briefly. The one thing they did is I did get coaster completion at Silver Dollar City by finally riding Wildfire, which was kind of the old steel B&M coaster. That was fine. It kind of gave me a headache, but it's kind of like a mini Hulk. It doesn't have the same crazy ideas. The biggest thing about that, it has a great view. So I did that. So I've now completed all the roller coasters currently at Silver Dollar City. I want to mention this more in contrast to the other parks, especially to a few of them. Silver Dollar City is one of those examples. Some people, including a lot of coaster enthusiasts, cite this as the best non-Disney Universal theme park. And it is a theme park, I believe, because it pretty much almost the entire area in various setups seems like a Frontierland. The music there, they have craftsmen, they have entertainment. It's all kind of a big Frontierland. It has a very confusing layout, I will say. Now, I've gone there 3 times in the past 3 years. After this third visit, I think I finally figured out the layout where we didn't go the wrong way. It's a little easier now because a few of the rides, like the old Fire in the Hole that were so confusing to find, are gone. So you can kind of figure it out better because the new Fire in the Hole is next to the fire area, so it's a lot easier. And Silver Dollar City, the reason people regard it so highly is, one, it's still fairly reasonable. Yes, the ticket prices have gone up, but they still are not on Disney level, and you can get a lot of deals, and season passes are pretty cheap, and the food isn't as expensive, and you never feel like you've been gouged because they also still have a lot of entertainment. They have a lot of variety of attractions. You have your extreme coasters that are in the woods, so you don't feel like you're just walking on hot blacktop. Food is kind of interesting. It reminds me a bit of old school Disney. But also, too, is that, yes, they do have their Trailblazer Fast Pass system that you could pay extra for. And mostly, though, you don't notice it too much. The main place you notice it is there's one coaster called Thunderation where basically people come in the exit and they just keep passing you. And it's annoying because there's not a merge point. And most of the time, that is how it works there. But it doesn't seem to have such a prevalence as it does at certain parks, like especially Six Flags Great America that I went to. So I find a lot of it to seem pretty easy, where a lot of the rides have 10, 15, 20-minute waits, even on fairly busy summer days. So that's the good thing about Silver Dollar City. Also, when they have added new attractions recently, the things they have added have been home runs. They added Outlaw Run, which was the second RMC coaster, this extremely thrilling, crazy, kind of rough wooden roller coaster with multiple inversions. They added Time Traveler, this extreme spinner that is also top-notch, great theming, one of the oddest coasters you'll ever do. When they replaced their Fire in the Hole coaster, which has been there over 50 years, with a new Fire in the Hole, which is kind of the same, but not rough, has better theming. It's just really cool, and almost anyone can ride it. They also replaced their longtime raft ride with something called Mystic River Falls, which is better themed and has a cool drop at the end. So they've been really hitting home runs. They don't have a new attraction every year, but when they do, they're home runs. They're actually currently working on a big resort, which they do not have an on-site resort. That is the thing I complain about the most, is you can't really find a good hotel nearby that without like staying at some sort of like Table Rock resort. So that's something that I think will even help more, and they'll keep expanding. I think there are many, many good things in store. But that's really just a contrast to the rest of what I experienced when I went to all these other parks. So as we dive in further to my Six Flags parks, I did want to kind of talk about the pricing structure, because I feel like, Sylvan City is kind of in its own ballpark, kind of in between, more in the Disney and Universal model. But if you think about it, all of these places have a very different approach to how they get money from guests. They're going to get your money somehow. How they do it and how you respond is interesting. Because if you think about Disney and Universal, they've continued to increase ticket prices each year. Even annual passes, especially for Disney, have just gotten so much higher. I remember, 7-8 years ago, I was like, okay, maybe I'll spend $800 to get an annual pass or whatever it was. Then it was like $900, and now it's like $1,500. And I'm like, I don't know. It's tougher. But they do that with the idea that it's kind of all in one. At least that was the idea for a long time, that it was all in one. You got Fast Pass included, early entry, things, extra magic hours. There were a lot of different elements that now have become upcharges, but I don't want to go too far down that road. Disney and Universal are expensive. However, their food is not as expensive as some other parks. For example, if you get like a sandwich and fries at a quick service, a lot of times you're talking like $11, $12, $13, maybe $14. A slice of pizza might run you $10.99 or something, which still feels high. But if you compare it to the way things are done at other parks. And that brings me to the Six Flags parks. And I think everybody knows that Six Flags now is a term that I use for all parks that were formerly Six Flags that have that name, like your Six Flags St. Louis, Great America, Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, and others that were formerly under Cedar Fair, like Cedar Point, Kings Island, Knott's Berry Farm, some of the other parks that are generally considered a little higher prestige. But they're all under this model, even if some of them have slightly different approaches, which I'll get into when I talk about each park. But the general idea, especially lately, is admission doesn't really matter. We will almost give away admission to get you in the park so you can spend money on other things. And that was the case a little bit with us this summer, because I looked into it and I thought, it'd be fun to go back to Kings Island, maybe Great America, but I wasn't thinking in terms of like a season pass. And my daughter hadn't really been as much to Six Flags St. Louis, except for when she was younger. This is my younger daughter who's now 12. And so I thought, well, we can go to Six Flags St. Louis. And then you look at it and it's like, at the time, this wasn't a special deal. The gold annual pass or gold season pass was $75. And that included parking, which parking runs $30, $35 at the park. So right there, you're talking about your admission is really like $40, $45. So of course, parking is really part of the admission, because there's no real way you can get around that. This isn't even like Disney where you can go stay at Pop Century or whatever and then not pay the parking fee. So, or, just take a bus or whatever. You're going to have to pay it, because most of these places you're just going to drive to. There's not a way to really walk into some of these parks. So you're going to pay the parking fee. So that's kind of included. And so I figured out, okay, they're offering this all park passport, which now included this year the Cedar Fair parks, which are some of the more valuable ones to me, like Kings Island. And that was an extra $125. So for $200 a person, you had access to all the parks. And you think, well, that still seems like a decent amount. But if you think about it, we went to 4 different parks, but also the amount of days we spent. Because what we did is we went to Kings Island, we split it over 2 days. We split Great America over 3 different days, though we only had 1 full day. We did a day at Worlds of Fun and a day at Six Flags St. Louis. So that's like 7 days right there. And especially if you think about parking, but even if you think about daily admissions, plus you get discounts and other benefits, I think it was like 10% off, but you use that every time. It can add up quickly. But next year, they are doing something even crazier, which is That pass I bought for $75, which currently they're running an MVP sale where it's cheaper. Like for Six Flags St. Louis, it's $55. There is no all park passport add-on. It includes it. And I don't know if this is going to be the case from here on out. It's unclear to me if the deal is just the discount on the passes or if the deal is also just adding all the parks and then they're going to go back to the other setup. But essentially what I can do, which I will do, even though I don't plan to go maybe to as many next year, $55 a person, at least as a Six Flags St. Louis. And this is a weird thing too, where you have to get it redeemed at your home park, and your home park can have a very different, like the season pass maybe for Kings Island might be different than for Six Flags St. Louis, which is on the cheaper side, but $55, and it includes all the parks. So, and this also, if I didn't already have a pass, I could buy this now, go the rest of the year, though some places aren't open, and then go for all of next year. Plus they're giving you an extra day and stuff. So my point of all this is to say, I mean, that's really cheap. $55, including parking and discounts for a gold pass for the whole year. I mean, really, I could just go to Six Flags St. Louis, and that's better than if I just went to the gate and bought it or bought it online. I think we'll do at least one trip. I'm wondering if next year's it won't be as many trips, but it'll more be, okay, we'll do Cedar Point, and maybe we'll hit something on the way back. I'm not sure about that. But my point is that it's a lot cheaper to get in. Now, granted, Disney and Universal have better offerings, but there's a big disparity. But where does this get made up? I mean, one, if you're going there on a daily basis, it's parking, but set that aside because that's also included for many people. It's with things like the food. The food is so much more expensive at these parks. So if you want a slice of pizza at some of these parks, it's like $20. And this is worse quality than Disney food. If you want to get chicken fingers and fries, you're looking at $18 or $19. And that does not include the drink. So if you want to get a soda with that, it's $6. So they are basically taking a different approach with charging so much for food. And also for skip the lines, because if you think about it, yes, we all complain Disney Genie Plus. I mean, now it's called Lightning Lane Multipass. I'll just call it Lightning Lane. Lightning Lane, we complain when it's, it started out, it's like $15, it's $20, it's like $30 a day, and you're reserving them and everything else. And then you have the single passes, which are going to run you $10, $15, $20, whatever. I don't love that. But here, I never bought a skip the line. Like there was a case where Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America was 2-hour wait. And I thought, okay, I want to ride that. I'll pay maybe $10, $12, $14. And it was $21 a person for a skip the line. And then they charge you online fees, not just taxes. So I bet you it would have run us probably more like $28 a person or something, $27 to get to the front line of a coaster. This is not Rise of the Resistance or something. It's a great coaster. I love it, but not themed or anything else. Also, the reason that line was so long is because they were only running one train. So this is a weird setup too, where people have talked about this with Disney, but I don't think it's as prevalent, but just be given the crowds and everything else. But Six Flags has this weird setup. And if you want to buy a full day, Flash Pass, or, I think they're gonna go with Fast Lane, which is the Cedar Fair one in the future. If you want to buy a full day one, on certain days you're talking like $200. You're talking like Universal Express type expenses. Actually, more than I paid for Universal Express when we were there that day. And still, the quality is not the same. But in a weird way, Six Flags has an incentive to not staff or not run a lot of trains, because then more people will buy skip the lines. And same, and with food, they also jack up the price because they want, in a weird way, the best value is, of course, they have these meal plans, which we actually did. So you can spend $45, or you can just buy a souvenir cup for $20 or anything else, which so many people do because the food prices are expensive. So you're like, wow, I got out of it amazingly well because I paid $40-something for the day versus paying at every meal. And granted, if you do it smartly, those meal plans can be a great value. But I'm just talking in terms of the pricing. So in a way, they're approaching it very differently, where they're going to get you with upcharges and with possibly with parking, but mostly with food charges and everything else. And you're a captive audience. Yes, you can get in your car and drive. And there are sometimes a lot of fast food places nearby. But a lot of times when I'm in a park, I really don't want to leave the park and come back. I just want to spend as much time. And then if I'm going to go eat afterwards, that's cool. But I'm not a big fan of doing that, but I know that can save you money. Or you even have people to bring their coolers and put them in the car and everything else. because things are so expensive. But so that's kind of the overall pricing structure that is very different. But I think in both cases, whether it's Disney, Universal, or Six Flags, you have to be really careful because the personal, like I talked about feeling inspired. Yes, I'm going to a Six Flags park for a different reason. One, usually it's closer, it's easy to get to, you can drive to it. It overall is going to be cheaper, especially with these passes. But in some way, I have to feel like the value is good or that they are treating me well. And that's the thing that Silver Dollar City and from what I've heard, Dollywood do so well. I have never come out of those parks and thought, one, they tried to gouge me. Two, they weren't treating me well. Three, I didn't get a good value. And four, they weren't giving it their all, whether it's through having a lot of entertainment or craftsmen or even the ride-ups and everything else or the rides themselves, that they weren't trying. I mean, sure, you run into one worker here and there, but they weren't trying their hardest. And this is where I think it becomes challenging because I will say Six Flags has a reputation for having bad employees, blaring music, bad ops, but it really varies across the board. It is not as simple as, okay, this is how they do things. Going to Six Flags St. Louis now, especially with the larger chain, is a very different experience from Great America, but an even bigger difference from Kings Island. It's almost another stratosphere, even a big difference from Worlds of Fun, though that park is kind of interesting because it's all over the map. So, when Six Flags comes out and have these terrible earnings where people are spending less in their parks, I think they think, oh, well, we'll just get people in the door and they'll have to spend. And a lot of people either A, use the meal plan, B, don't eat in the parks and just work around it. And that's what I've always said about Disney. When Disney keeps raising prices, people are going to keep their budget where it is. If Disney raises their prices, somebody may change from a moderate to a value or go off site or not buy as many souvenirs. But Disney is running into this where it's like, people are only going to spend what they're going to spend. So if you put in these really high-tech rides, spend all this money, raise your ticket prices, you may not get more money from people. So then you have to choose, do I want more people, which is what often Six Flags is doing, get people in there, or do I want to have fewer people and have them spend more? But either approach requires that you provide what the guest considers a value. And all those reasons that I talked about for Disney having lower attendance or for generally the tourism theme park industry being down that I talked about earlier, all can still apply in many ways, depending. I mean, obviously there are parks that are further north that might not be hit as much by climate change, but are still being hit, but in a different way. But especially when you're talking about service and value and the struggling economy, you have to be extremely careful because Six Flags is like, oh, we have bad earnings. So what's their reaction going to be? It's probably going to be some of the things I saw, but it could be closing parks, closing rides without warning, like King Ka at Great Adventure, which the only reason people knew about is because people like El Toro Ryan and Coaster Studios and others got on and said, you better go to this, it's going to close. That's not good service. Think about if Disney just decided, I mean, they've closed things, but one day the Rivers of America was gone and they gave everyone no notice. People would lose their mind. People were mad enough when they had the announcement at D23 about the Great Movie Ride closing a little bit after, or Ellen's Energy Adventure. So that's where it's not apples to apples, but I think the overall principles are similar. But I want to make sure I'm going to talk about these ideas as I go through each park. And at the end, I will do something fun. I'll talk about my favorite new coasters to me, what I enjoyed the most, and ranking and saying the worst ones. We'll get into that a little bit, but let's talk about each park. Six Flags St. Louis. I had been there a lot of times. I've talked about it multiple times on this podcast, especially early on. They have 10 roller coasters. I had been on 9 of them when we went, and this was it's about 20 minutes from our house. So this was just a day thing, and having the season pass also made me feel less pressure to stay as long. Because honestly, there's a lot of flat rides that I'm not going to do, my daughter's not going to do, that are just, they've really focused more on the thrill side lately with like the Catwoman whip. They added this Joker ride, which is a flat ride that basically, one of those ones that's like, has like a turning, spinning idea and it flips you up and around. They're in almost every park. Sorry, I don't have the name on top of my head to explain it, but they've added that, which is super intense. And so they're really focusing on that end. And these are ones I never would have done in my life. life. When I've tried to do ones less intense in the past, I've gotten sick. So I just won't do it. I love roller coasters. So our focus was really on the roller coasters. But I just want to talk about the park in general. The park is looking rough because when you think about if Six Flags really decides they're going to close some parks, St. Louis is one people reference a lot. There are a few others that get referenced pretty often that just haven't gotten a lot of attention lately, whether you're talking like a Darien Lake, but that has a weird setup where they manage it but don't own it, or a Frontier City. There's a few others that might happen, but this is definitely up there, especially now with Six Flags America closing and California's Great America still likely being sold off, from what I understand. St. Louis is in danger. And unfortunately, you see it. You've seen it in the park where this opened as Six Flags Over Mid-America, one of the original 3 Six Flags parks along with Georgia and Texas. And it's really charming. The pictures of that where it had these lands that were more themed to like the Mississippi River, and they had Tom and Huck type rides and boat rides. And you see a few rides from that era. Mainly there's a log flume, the River King Mine Train, which is a fun mine train. You have an old railroad, but you really have a pretty limited collection of rides from those early era. Even things that seem old, like your Thunder River was a boat ride, but that showed up, I think, in the late 80s, or you have the Colossus Ferris wheel. So you have some things that are more classic, but overall, it's weird because it's a park that focuses on coasters, but most of the coasters are old. They've moved. Their most recent one was Boomerang, and it moved, and it's a Vekoma Boomerang, and everybody hates those. Speaking of that, that was the one that was new to me that I had never ridden, and it hurt. It was uncomfortable. Actually, most of the rides in this park hurt. It's known for the Boss, which is notoriously painful. And I had heard they added some new Titan track, which is track that would smooth it out. And it hurt. It hurt a lot. And you think about rides there. People say Space Mountain or the Matterhorn hurts. No, you don't even know a ride that hurts if you've ever ridden that. And it's a ride with a lot of potential. It's back in the woods. It has some big hills. It's a wooden roller coaster. And it's painful. And I would say overall, Mr. Freeze is still running pretty well. It has a backwards launch. It's like a shuttle coaster that goes up a spike. And American Thunder is kind of a nice wooden roller coaster, but even that felt rougher than it used to be. We did their Rookie Racer, which is a new kids ride, Vekoma Junior coaster, and that one is smooth. But most of their rides are really showing their age. They're really hurting. So what does a park like that do? Because if Six Flags, the overall entity, is struggling, I guess they have Six Flags America. You can move something there. But is moving another coaster, is doing something that's not a huge investment going to draw more crowds that then justifies that investment? And even just upgrading, like they made changes to the Boss, it still hurt. I don't know. You'd have to basically start over and bring in RMC at Rocky Mountain Construction. So that is an example of a park that's really struggling. And I also find the employees there are typically, they try. It's nothing about anyone. I've never had anyone be really rude, but it's just a park that seems to be hurting. We went there. It was plenty warm. Log Flume wasn't open. Thunder River wasn't open. So there's no way to cool off at all. They have an indoor dark ride, the Justice League ride, but this Justice League in particular seems, compared to the one in Chicago, which I would do in August, just seems to be kind of beat up and in rough shape. So I would just say, I don't mean to dump on this park, because I feel like if this park, somehow Six Flags wanted to sell it and it was bought by Herschend, who runs Solar City. Now, granted, it would take a lot of work. I think they would have to probably remove half the park. One, a lot of the DC theming wouldn't work anymore. But if I look at that park and I say, okay, you got a raft ride, that could be themed up better. You got a log flume, that could be themed up better. You got a mine train. If you retract the Boss completely, and the Screaming Eagle was fixed, you've got 2 good wooden roller coasters in the trees in the back of the park, which is very Herschend-like. And you just I think they could make it work. And, they've taken over Kentucky Kingdom, which is 4 hours away in Louisville. They also have Dollywood 8 hours away from here in St. Louis. And so our city about 3.5 to 4 hours away. So geographically, I think it makes a lot of sense to have this. But I just think the amount of work involved would be extensive, because I just don't see Herschend running a park that keeps running the Boomerang and the Ninja. I just don't see them doing that. But I will say overall, I found my experience to be fun, because going with my daughter who loves roller coasters and getting to do things, she's never done any of them really, except for the mine train. I hadn't done Mr. Freeze in years. She loved that ride. We didn't do all the coasters, but we did a significant amount. I can't do Batman. I just can't do it's so intense and it's inverted, and I can't do it. I can't. So we didn't do that one. we had a great time. And I still think, I mean, it was a value because it's part of this pass. So 20 minutes away, it's hard to complain. I thought I might go there again this summer, but all those rides hurt so much. Maybe I'll go in the fall. They have Fright Fest, but it's not really my thing, being my age and everything else. But, would like to ride a few more of the coasters. I'll be curious to see the future of this park because every time I go, basically every time I've gone, even before the pandemic, probably since like 2016, I've thought, is this the last time I'm going to go to this park? And this doesn't have to do with some big financials that Six Flags has or anything else. It's just, I just have this thought like, is this park going to make it? And that's something I've thought about for a long time. And I'll be curious to see where it kind of goes in the future. But I want to move on to something a lot more positive, which is one of my favorite regional parks I've been to, which now is under Six Flags, but to me still feels very different, which is Kings Island. So Kings Island, one of the top-notch Cedar Fair parks, still feels weird to be a Six Flags park. Now, I say this, it is a park with plenty of carnival rides, plenty of flat rides, a lot of elements that seem like they fit in a Six Flags park, some very top-notch coasters that go really high and really fast and everything else. But to me, it feels much more like a local park. And what I mean by that is it seems like the staff and the guests really care about this park and kind of keeping it what it is. You can look no further than the reaction to the Beast and how many people go there for the special night ride, which we did attempt to do, I will say. So like I said, I went one time. I have done a podcast about this, so I'll try not to just summarize too much about the park or the rides that I already talked about a lot the last time. Definitely check out that episode though, because I also recorded my immediate reactions while I was walking around the park. I went solo in September 2023. But again, I drove up, stayed overnight, and then went to the park from I think a little before 10 till like 2:30 in the afternoon. So it was pretty quick. But because it wasn't crowded, I still was able to do quite a bit when I was there. During this visit, we drove up, but we went to the park that evening because it was open till 10, stayed from 5 till about 10, and the next day again went till mid-afternoon before we left, similar time frame. So it was basically like one full day split across two, which is a benefit of the season pass. And we did 10 roller coasters while we were there. They have quite a few more than that. We did not do all of them. 4 of them were new to me that I did not do the last trip. One is the Family Boomerang, Snoopy's Soapbox Racers. I also had never done Woodstock Express, which is kind of an old family wooden coaster. Had never done the red side of Racer because it wasn't open. It was actually racing this time. Oh, so cool. And I had never done the indoor coaster Flight of Fear because it is one of those where the line gets super long. It has terrible capacity. We made that a top priority the second day, which when I went the last time, I wanted to make sure I'd never ridden the Beast and Orion and Diamondback and everything. I wanted to make sure I hit those this time. But I will say, has Kings Island seemed to change at all from the Six Flags merger? Not really from what I could tell. The operations are still awesome. They're running multiple trains. They're moving super fast. The lines were not that long. It was kind of messy when we were there because the first day we arrived around 5 and we just missed a huge thunderstorm where many of the rides had gone down due to lightning and thunder. So there was almost nothing running. We got there and just rode the carousel. But then things started to open up quickly. And from there, we saw, oh my gosh, we see that the Racer's running. So let's go do that because a lot of the other coasters weren't at the time. Can I just say, when you have this, the Racer is one of the original rides at Kings Island, has been there since the start. It became one of the most famous roller coasters at the time because it was featured on an episode of the Brady Bunch. It's one thing to go on it. It's kind of this old wooden coaster that goes up and down and, has a lot of airtime. But at the time was very high and fast, but now kind of is dwarfed by everyone around it. But when I rode it last time, they only had the one side open. This time they had both sides open and they were actually racing. And it's so cool because both sides kind of turn and go around. And when you get up on the lift hill and then all of a sudden you have another train next to you, man, that's cool. We lost both times. We did the blue side, we did the red side, lost both times. So it wasn't based on the side, but to do a racing coaster, that made it extra special. That we jumped on, we're jumping on things that went. I love Adventure Express. It's this old school Aero Mine train with a ridiculous ending where you go up past this really well-themed area. And the theming looked great on the ride. Everything seemed very cool. And then it, of course, just puts you in the station after the big lift hill at the end. But it's really fun. And also I should mention this was my daughter's first visit to Kings Island. So everything was new. And she's 12. She's not really one of the people people that will do a lot of research on this. So she comes in, I'll tell her about a ride, but she's coming into this mostly cold without preconceived notions. And that can be super fun because she doesn't know anything about any of these rides. Her favorite ride, though, Snoopy Soapbox Racers, which I was like, really? But it's just, she said, because it's so smooth. And she also liked the theming in the Planet Snoopy area. We also did the log flume. Longest wait on the entire trip was the Charlie Brown log flume. It's had many different names, but basically they were only running one side. So that is one example where they didn't have it all going, and that is why we waited longer. But overall, I mean, Mystic Timbers is one of my favorite all-time roller coasters. So good. I think it's going to go past Time Traveler and move into number 3 after this ride because it's so out of control. It doesn't have huge stats. It's an incredible ride. In case you're curious on the entire top 10, I haven't made this update yet, but I do have a blog post on tomorrowsociety.com site you can check out. I will give you a hint that Velocicoaster does pretty well on there, but it is now number 1. But there was a different number 1 that is now number 2. But that one, for example, it hadn't been open for a while, opened up, and there's a huge line of people. They just plowed through it. It was like, I think it said 15 minutes or maybe 25. It wasn't even nearly as long as it said. And we spent a lot of time in the Snoopy area, like I said, doing multiple coasters there, including the new Family Boomerang. First time I've ever done one of those Family Boomerangs. I think it's really smooth. I still don't really I don't know if this is just like a remnant of how painful the Boomerang at Six Flags St. Louis was that we did, which was the first time I'd ever done that. It really hurt. So I don't love the backwards portion that much. They also have a dark ride, which sadly has been announced since we went there, has been announced that Boo Blasters dark ride used to be Scooby-Doo themed, has had various iterations, is going to close for good. We're not sure what's going to replace it. We did it 4 times because Etta loves, she plays a lot of Nintendo Switch, loves video games. So we did this ride 4 times. Also, it was air conditioned, and while it wasn't super hot, that was nice too. And then that night, we tried to do a night ride on the Beast. This is my tip for you. If you want to do a night ride on the Beast and the park closes at 10, get there. You got to get in line at the right time. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can do 2 things. One, you can try to do it before the fireworks. If they're doing fireworks are the killer. They are not your friend with this. If they're doing fireworks, you might be able to slide in before, but you may have to buy a skip the line because it's really hard to get it all figured out that way, which I think a lot of people are doing. So we get in line at 9 o'clock. And I had heard that even though the park closes at 10, at 9:40, they will shut down the line until 10:30, and then you can actually do the night rides. Everyone can stay in line, but Etta was pretty exhausted by this point. So my thought, we got in line at 9, it said it was a 30-minute wait, and I thought, okay, I think we can make it. Line didn't really move that much, and then they announced at like 9:20, okay, we're only running 2 more trains, then we're shutting it down before 9:30. We had this thought. My first thought was like, we're staying because this is great. Because then after the fireworks at 10:30, you get a pitch black night ride on the Beast. Etta just was not having it. I mean, not complaining, but she had this look like she was done. And I quickly was like, hey, it's going to be no fun for either of us to stand in line for an hour and then ride this ride. We're going to be so tired the next day we have to drive back. So we just bailed and we did the Beast the next day. The funny kicker to all this is that Etta did not like the Beast at all. She thought it was super rough and did not like the helix into the tunnel, which is the most unhinged, ridiculous part, but thought it was too much. So I'm glad we didn't wait an hour for her to not like it. But one more thing, the next day we show up at the park and the people at the front gate were basically like, and I think there were storms overnight, like maybe like 8 a.m. We show up at like 9:30. They said, so we've had a power outage, 75% of the attractions are down. I'm like, okay, which attractions are down? They have no idea. This was not one of the best employees I talked to or best staff members I talked with. But so our big goal of this day was, one, we got to do Flight of Fear, but also Kings Island, which all these parks should have this. Kings Island has something where annual season pass holders of any type I think it might be gold or higher, but we have gold passes, so can get in the park early. And they have kind of like a Disney early morning extra magic hour or something, but a few attractions are open early. They had the Snoopy area with Snoopy Soapbox Racers open. We had already done that. The one we wanted to do was Orion. And also we wanted to ride Flight of Fear as a rope drop attraction. So it worked out perfect where we showed up during that 9:30 to 10 window, I think at like 9:40, walk on. Orion is their giga coaster. Some people question it because it's technically not 300 feet high, but the drop is 300 feet. I'm calling it a giga coaster. I don't care. But so we did Orion, and then we're able to get in line and ride Flight of Fear with like a 5-minute wait. And Flight of Fear, I'd heard terrible things about. It's kind of like Rock and Roller Coaster, where it's indoors, it's dark, and it has amazing queue theming, and then doesn't really have any theming. It's not kind of like that, but it is a launch coaster indoor where, again, you feel like you're going even faster than you are, has multiple inversions and kind of a spaghetti bowl setup. So not exactly like Rock and Roller Coaster, but felt very similar. The theming in the queue with the alien ship and everything is the best theming Kings Island has. I wish there was something more on the coaster, but I had heard this was really rough and bad. And yes, the restraints are super uncomfortable, but I enjoyed this much more, possibly because my expectations are low. Summing up Kings Island. Kings Island should still be the gold standard that these other Six Flags parks are trying to meet, or that Six Flags as a chain, when they look at their parks like Great America or some of the other ones I didn't even visit, can look at Kings Island and say, this is the kind of park I want to be. We have a variety of attractions. They have a lot of different flat rides. We did antique cars that were really fun. We did a carousel. They have bumper cars. They have a railroad. They have a lot of different types of attractions, log flumes, raft rides, everything else. And they have great coasters, but most importantly, they have staff, notwithstanding the person at the gate, that care, and great operations. Great operations. The park does not feel like they're skimping in any way. Yes, they have fast lane, but you don't get frustrated very much in line. I think the Beast at night notwithstanding. Overall, you're not getting frustrated standing in line and not moving. You move through the lines quickly. Orion has amazing operations from, I remember my last time I went. Diamondback, same deal. Diamondback is a hyper coaster that they have, a steel coaster. And they have a wide range of coasters. You can go there, ride a lot of the big coasters, and none of them go upside down. Flight of Fear goes upside down, and Banshee goes upside down, and Invertigo, which is the inverted boomerang. I will not do Invertigo, I'll just say. But some of the other big coasters like Orion, Diamondback, and the Beast don't go upside down. Mystic Timber's another one. So if you're somebody that hates that, you can go experience some great thrills, but in a different way. So this is the standard that these other parks should be striving for, and I hope that they continue to try and hit this standard, because this park and the chain itself deserves it. Honestly, I would go back there next week. I'm not going to, I don't think, but I could. One, because I love the ride so much. There's still ones I have not done. I have not done Banshee. I don't love inverted coasters, but I think I will do it at some point. And, we've done most of the other ones. I didn't do, there's another Woodstock theme one called, I forget exactly the name of it, but it's like what they call is like a hang and bang, where you hang. It's not supposed to be very comfortable. Haven't done that one yet. Also haven't done the little kids Great Pumpkin Coaster, but I've done a lot of the coasters. It just shows you, though, I've done 12 coasters there because I've also done the Bat, and there are still others I have not done at this park. Let's move on then to Six Flags Great America. Six Flags Great America is one of the biggest Six Flags parks. It also draws attendance among the highest, along with like Magic Mountain in California and Great Adventure in New Jersey. It is one of the most popular Six Flags parks. And because you have Chicago, the massive city of Chicago nearby, and then you also have Milwaukee, because it's actually north of Chicago. Now, I already did a podcast about this back in June 2022. It is worth checking out. But I do want to spend some time on this one, because this one to me is the one where I noticed, one, we were there the longest, so I have a lot of thoughts there. We were there, we got there. Went again for like a half day in the evening because they were open late. Did a full day the next day from like 10 to 8. And then did just a few hours because we wanted to fill in a few things on the 3rd before we drove back. So we got a very good look at this park and saw a lot. I will say up front, I think Kings Island has a really cool setup in the morning where everybody can get in early, and then you just go stand near the ride you want to go to. It's a giant park, and it works so well. Six Flags Great America has a setup where they don't even open the front gates until, pretty close to opening, not at opening, but let's say the park opens at 10:30, you might open the gates at 10:15 or 10:20. And then there's this windy line where they try to keep everyone there. And we're smarties, so we showed up well early, and also our hotel. Shout out to the awesome Spring Hill Suites. The one near Kings Island was incredible. The one near Chicago was a little old. Both of them were really close to the park, especially the one at Kings Island, where if you want to go to a hotel, they have given me no money for this. You get off at the highway exit, Kings Island's to your right, just to the left is this hotel. It's by itself, so it's not like near some big, massive group of them, not near the highway. Go to the Spring Hill Suites near Kings Island. That's what I will say there. But our hotel was very close, so we were able to get there with plenty of time, but then they have this weird setup where you're kind of lined all around. That is not great. And this is what I will say. The first day, we arrive on a Sunday at Six Flags Great America. Sunday, good crowds, but they appeared to be well-staffed. They were running good amount of trains. The waits were long, but were not insane, but just so many people. Kings Island is so big, but I never felt like there were spots where we were mobbed by people. Different days of the week and everything else, but just Kings Island's a really big park too, and it didn't feel as cramped. Six Flags Great America had times where I was like, there are just so many people here. And I think part of that is just being near Chicago. But that Sunday, we were able to do some things just by kind of hitting anything that didn't have long lines. When you're showing up at like 5 o'clock and you're kind of hoping, okay, the park's going to drift away in the evening. It didn't really do that. But we did do things like Viper. There's also American Eagle, which is also a racing coaster. They had both sides working. Not racing. I'm not even sure they're capable of racing anymore. That's a really rough ride, but it's like Racer, but bigger. I had done one side again, but I did both sides this time, which are extremely similar. I really enjoyed that one. I found it so rough, but in a good way, where essentially it's almost like it didn't hurt my body, but there's parts where like you have airtime where you're lifted out of your seat. At one point, you're lifted out of your seat, and then you like float and slam back into your chair. It's not for everyone, but I know people really, really want them to retrack American Eagle, but I found it to be better than I remembered. And Viper I found to be a little worse. Just, it's given 3 years. You never know how these things are going to be running at the time. We were just doing anything that was less crowded. One thing I should note, if you go to this park, the water rides, they most of the time have been opening at 12 or sometimes later, and they close early. We ran into this when we kept getting turned around. I get very confused in Great America. Got to the log flume a minute after it closed and could not ride it, but then thankfully went to the raft ride, and they stayed open later than the sign. So kudos to the staff members at the raft ride there who stayed open longer because we were able to ride that one that night. The big draw for us going to this park was the new dive coaster, Wrath of Rakshasa, which had just opened several months earlier from when we went in early August. I've never ridden a B&M dive coaster. I know they're all over, so this is a little embarrassing to admit. This was our top priority. The first day, it had really long waits the whole time into the night. And this time, we rope dropped and we lucked out where they kind of lined us up and opened a new row, and we went right to the front before they opened the gates. And there we were on the second train of the day, and everyone with the running of the bulls, as people call it, was just so ridiculous. All the people sprinting. It was very entertaining. We were on the second train and front row, and I had heard this ride was really rough, but I actually thought it was awesome. I'll talk about it a little more in a bit, but I thought it was really great and a little frightening. Front row, and the dive coasters have a thing where you kind of hang up at the top of the lift hill and wait. If you're in the front row, ooh, that is a scary thought. Also, the night before, we had done a night ride on the Whizzer, which is this old Schwarzkopf coaster that goes in the woods where you kind of sit, where you could technically, it's kind of like the really, really old Space Mountain seating where you could have two people sitting on top of each other. We each got our own rows. Fun old coaster at night, seemed to go really quickly, and that was super fun. As far as other rides we did a lot of the roller coasters. During that trip, we did 8 coasters. 3 of them were new to me, which was one side of American Eagle, Wrath of Rakshasa, and I had never done Demon. The Arrow, it kind of reminds me of Ninja a little bit, though it's a little better themed. Has, multiple loops, multiple corkscrews, a lot of inversions, and it hurts. Oh my gosh, it hurts so much. Oh, that was both of our least favorite coasters we did the entire summer. Actually, for me, there's one that's worse, but it was at his least favorite, definitely there. Where you're halfway through it and she's like, this hurts so much. And we were near the front of the train too, so it might even be worse in the back. Let's just talk about first the operations, because the Sunday went pretty smoothly. The Monday, we get there. We do Wrath of Rakshasa. Etta really loves that Justice League ride, so we went and did that really quickly. And all of a sudden, the lines we did Demon, and then the lines ballooned where everything had hour plus waits. And if you look by, saw all the people, none of the lines were moving at all. It's like, what is happening? Well, I thought maybe there was some sort of shutdown in the park. Also, the app stopped working. So the app kept saying like Raging Bull had a 15-minute wait. We walked over there and there were just people everywhere. So what we had to do is find the board that had the wait times. And the board quickly told us it had a 2-hour wait. And same thing. It said Goliath had 10 minutes, 90 minutes on the board. Superman, hour and a half. Up and down the list. It was bad. So then you look and you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to go on this one thing that has a 20-minute wait or whatever. So we kind of had to veer off and do some other things. But I will say that Monday, I didn't understand, but I think what we eventually figured out was that they were running one train on everything. So that is why the lines were so long. Because then Tuesday morning, we're like, okay, I really want to do Raging Bull. It was my favorite coaster the last time we went. Still my favorite coaster there. Love it. It's a hyper coaster. That classic B&M Hyper from the late 90s. That means it's over 200 feet tall. Amazing first drop, kind of drops you into the tunnel, and then it does a lot of turns. Super smooth. So much smoother than a lot of newer coasters I've been on, actually. So we rope dropped and went to that on Tuesday. We basically went back on Tuesday mostly just to ride Raging Bull, and then Etta wanted to do Justice League again, and then we also did the Whizzer again because it didn't have a very long wait before we left. The Raging Bull, we get there, we're one of the, I think we're on again, second train, first full train. We get over there, and the person makes the announcement, I just want to let you know that today, all day, we're only going to have one train, so if you come back later, you're going to face a really long line. I think that was the case with most of the coasters during the week. And that's just terrible. So, what I said or about Six Flags in general and about inspiration or about Disney, I know that because we were there a decent amount of time and had season passes, we checked the most of the boxes. However, I also really wanted to get on X-Flight for the first time, which is a wing coaster, and it always was over an hour, and we couldn't rope drop everything, so that never worked. I didn't really want to do Superman, which was a flying coaster, but that was also an hour to 2 hours every time. And I'm glad we had that extra Tuesday, or we wouldn't have done Raging Bull. And, like I said, that was when I was thinking about buying a Skip the Line. But Goliath is an RMC coaster that I did the last time that I really like. We never ended up doing it because it always had really long waits. And the thing was, it wasn't just that there was long waits. It was you would go by and the lines just weren't moving. So this was a contrast to Kings Island, where I felt like with Mystic Timbers and Orion and others, you would see the lines just moving quickly. Here, the lines just stalled out. And that's when you only have one train and you have these popular rides. I mean, some of these rides are capable of 3 trains and at least 2. 2 would make a big difference because right away you're doubling your capacity. Doing them on one at a park this busy, even during the week, because there were fewer people on the paths on Monday and Tuesday. But the lines were longer on Monday because they were only running one train. Now, this obviously could have to do with staffing. So I don't know the reasons behind this. All I can talk about is my personal experience. We still had a great time. One thing that was really fun is we did the double-decker carousel, which is at the front of the park. It kind of goes back to the heyday of like Marriott's and California's Great America. That is super cool, and that we got off that, and all of a sudden there was this trolley going around, and people were dancing and singing, and they were playing Celebration. I was like, what is this, like a party trolley or something? No, it was a parade. This was the last night of their like American Nights celebration they were doing this summer, and they had a parade. It was short, but it was super fun. It was literally right in front of our faces. We stumbled upon it, so that was a blast and not something I expected. It's funny because I should also mention about the dining. The first night we didn't buy the full meal plan. We bought what's called a single meal plan, which you get an entree, side, drink, and an extra snack. And it's about the price that you would pay just for the entree if you were walking up and buying it. And so it was a good deal. We were trying to get across the street to actually get the snack, and we're blocked by the parade, but eventually got there. The second day, we tried something where when we had been at Kings Island, I did not invest in the meal plan because we were splitting across 2 days. So I didn't think it made sense to do the all-day meal plan when we were only there for a short time. I think it would have been worth it, but again, still not as much. When we had a full day at Great America, my first thought was, yes, we're going to do this meal plan. And because at Kings Island, there was one point where I wasn't hungry, Etta got a pizza, and then I got food like at 2 hours later. The meal plan is set up where every 90 minutes you can order a full entree or a snack or something else. Plus, at Great America, you get the souvenir cup. The downside is you have to carry the souvenir cup around. The good side is you can get drinks every 15 minutes. It was about $45, and then we just took turns eating. Or a lot of times, like, for example, if she wanted pizza, it came with breadsticks. She doesn't really like the breadsticks. She gets the pizza. I eat the breadsticks. Later on, I got like a burger or something else I got with fries. She liked the fries. I ate that. So, I mean, it sounds a little ridiculous, but the prices for food were so expensive that if you can guarantee that, okay, I'm only going to spend $45 for the full day for two of us, you can pay more than that at one meal at some of these places. Best meal at Great America I had was a barbecue meal at this like place in the Yukon Territory. Felt like it was somewhere out of Kings Island, who actually had a barbecue place, but was closed due to the power outage when we went. But was awesome. Awesome. It's like the buffet style. I picked like brisket, you get a side, I got baked beans, everything else. Best meal I had on the trip by far. Overall, the food still is very generic, kind of, basic amusement park food. The two things at Great America that were the toughest to get around were the one train operations, where they're just running one train everywhere. So even without it being as crowded, everything had unmovable lines. Like we did the Dark Knight coaster, where that one's like a wild mouse. So it had more than one train because you're obviously riding it. But you walk into this big room, and we stood in there for like 20 minutes with no explanation from staff, nothing, didn't move. And then all of a sudden we went through and basically got right on. So they were doing something weird with staggering where they sent a bunch of people through and not, but no explanation. And to me, that approach is really frustrating, I gotta say. Another time with Viper, we stood at the merge point for so long as they let people after people after people, and then finally let us through. Once we got through, we were right in. Also, the second day, they only had one of the two American Eagle trains running, and whereas the first day we walked right on it, though it has a ridiculously long queue that's impossible to get through. Second day, everybody just stood there, and even though it said 20 minutes, I think we waited 30 because it was only, you've got one train of one side, you're basically cutting your capacity in half, and this was across the board. I mean, I felt like the staff members were nice. There was a funny moment with American Eagle where this kid really wanted to be tall enough to ride it, and the ride-up put the thing on. It looked like it was really close, and then stood there and acted like he wasn't sure, and then gave her the thumbs up, and everybody cheered. So there were a lot of moments like that. I think there's still a lot of people, whether it's Six Flags, former Cedar Fair, Disney, anywhere else, that care a lot about this. But I think the one train operations and just that park looks kind of beat up in like, not in terms of the coasters. The coasters were running great. Wrath of Rakshasa looks great, but just some of the other elements of it, if you really think about it, no matter how cheap they make these parks, they need people, not just locals, to go to them. They need some people to travel some amount of time. Whether it's me, it's like 5 hours, or some people just 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, everything else to really fill those parks. So you can get people season passes, but if people go, like I overheard someone in line at American Eagle who basically said, we've done 3 rides in 6 hours. When Six Flags announces their earnings are low, I think about something like that, where the only way around it is skip the lines that are super expensive and just, we still had a great time, but that's got to be improved. So finally, we went to Worlds of Fun. I'm going to hurry up through this, sadly, because we're coming up on an hour and a half here. Worlds of Fun is in Kansas City. My brother lives there with their family. I'd never been there before, and it's known for having some really good coasters. And also, it's themed to various elements of the world. I found Worlds of Fun to be kind of a charming park. The downside is we went there on one of the hottest days of the year when the high was like 96 degrees. It was just the day that worked out for everyone, and it was brutal in there. I will say that I found, I think, on a nicer day with cooler weather, I mean, they were playing the same music in the Africa area that they have that is played at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Come on, isn't that cool? That was awesome. They have some various themed areas to like Egypt. There's one to Europe where we did the antique cars, and we also did like the bumper cars that are kind of themed to Europe. You've got, Mamba, Fury of the Nile water raft ride. The Africa area has the two of the biggest coasters, Prowler and Zambezi Zinger. Both are awesome. I'm going to talk about the 3 coasters in a bit when I talk about my top 5 new coasters. Those are the only 3 we did because we had to go on a Saturday, and while it was super hot, which we thought might keep the crowds down, the lines got really long, really fast. They have an inverted coaster called the Patriot we were going to do, and the line just got too long. The water rides obviously had huge lines and also didn't open till 12 again. Don't love that. But I will say that we did do the raft ride, but we got in line minutes after 12 and still waited like 40 minutes because they were sending all the fast lane people and just kept sending them over and over and over from this slow loader. And we're standing out in the heat just baking. Don't love that. And this is not just a Six Flags thing. This is an amusement park thing. But you guys got to find a better way to, even if people pay for this, space it out a little better, especially when people are struggling. And why do you have no shade out in the open near the water rides? We also, at Great America, I haven't mentioned this, they have a thing where you stand in the sun near the water rides, which I guess gets you ready for them. Also, the Aquaman ride there is the most ridiculous thing I've ever ridden. It used to be called the Yankee Clipper and was rethemed when they set up their whole DC area, expanded it. But that is a thing. It's like kind of like a log flume, but it's not their log flume. That's a different ride. But it's like a boat setup. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Journey to Atlantis, but it's not a water coaster like that. And you go down the hill and there's water there and it basically just smacks you right in the face. Like this, I couldn't believe it. I was watching people and I'm like, that can't be. It's got to be like deceptive, like it goes over your head. No, you put your head down, it just hits you right in the face. I cannot even, unless you're really, really short, I don't know how anybody came out of that ride not getting wet. Now, that day was warm, but not as warm. Man, you could have put that in Worlds of Fun. I think I would have just rode it over and over again if there wasn't such a long line. But my point is, I think Worlds of Fun, theming wise, is really cool. If they could do a few things, like get rid of a few of the carnival rides, add a few more things. They have no indoor dark rides. Most of their rides beyond the big coasters are pretty typical carnival rides, even if they are themed to like the Old West or whatever. There was one moment where we were trying to get food, and here's the big downside to World of Fun. One, a bunch of the food places were closed on a Saturday in August. Another thing is, two, the staff were not very friendly, especially. We get there and we're like, okay, Zambezi Zinger, their newest coaster, is open. We get in line, we walk through the really long queue to get to people who, well, not like, oh, sorry, sir, we're just really closed. We're basically just like, we're closed, go away, yelling from really far away in not a friendly way. We also had several times where I had asked questions to someone about where I could get food, and they just seemed really confused and didn't seem to understand. And also, the indoor places did not have great air conditioning. So, Worlds of Fun is one of those places where you can really feel the staff reductions that are happening. And I don't know, I'm not saying this is just Six Flags corporate versus before with Cedar Fair, since I've only visited one time. It's a park that could be a gem. It has 3 incredible coasters. We were there on a really hot day, so I know it's going to be challenging, but on a day like that, a Saturday in the summer, you need to be fully staffed, and you need to find some way to have more food places open. A bunch of them were closed. Just have more options for everything, and they really didn't. I found that to be a little frustrating, despite really enjoying the park, where I think the park looks great. I was surprised by how charming it was. I expected it to be more like a Six Flags St. Louis, where you kind of have a little bit of theming, but I was surprised there was a lot of shade in certain areas, not in those queues for the water rides, but in parts of it, there was shade, and some of the areas are super cute and cool. And it's really just a matter of, I think they don't really need more headlining coasters. What they need, I think they need an indoor attraction, if not 2. They do have a few shows, though one of them is kind of not fully indoors. But they need more, like all these parks, they need more indoor attractions. You do. Six Flags Great America has 2, but it's a massive one. Kings Island has 1. Six Flags St. Louis has 1. Worlds of Fun, in terms of rides, has 0. Silver Dollar City, really, as far as attractions, you've got 2, Fire in the Hole and the Flooded Mine. So it's not that much better, but you do also have a lot of entertainment and, a lot of other things you can do. So it's a little better. Again, I'm not expecting these parks to be Walt Disney World, but you need to focus on, 1, staffing. No matter what you charge me for my pass, I expect the rides to be open. And most importantly, I expect them to be staffed well enough and for the app to work so I know how long I'm going to wait in line. Just some basic stuff. 2, I think the food, while a little cheaper at Worlds of Fun and Kings Island than the Six Flags parks, I suspect that's going to get streamlined more in the future, but unfortunately probably in a bad way. But I think you need more food options. But the biggest thing is just the price is so high that there needs to be a slight course correction there, because I know that's their business model, but there has to be some adjustments. And the biggest thing overall is I just want to go in feeling like whatever type of park, if you're a roller coaster park, I want to ride those coasters. I don't want to have to wait 2 hours for every single one. If you're a theme park, like with Dark Rides and everything else, or your kids park, I want whatever they are focusing on, they need to do it to the best of their ability. And while I think Kings Island is still right up there, I think Worlds of Fun has potential with better staffing. Silver Dollar City is still awesome. Great America is the one that is like the poster child for both great things, brand new coaster, really cool, other great coasters, a variety of flat rides and other attractions. But the cuts are showing Six Flags. Do better, because that park is good, but I don't know if I would go back anytime soon without them adding another big new ride. And they just added a ride, so I'm not expecting it to happen. There's just certain elements of it that I found pretty frustrating. And granted, it could just be the day I went, when I went in June 2022. Everything was on multiple trains, weren't long lines, but this year, definitely a step down from the other time I was there. Before I wrap this up, I'm going to quickly talk about the new coasters I did and which were my favorite and least favorite. Like I mentioned, I did 34 coasters. I did 13 new ones. So we're going to list 8 of them total. Let's start with the 3 least favorites. Number 3 is my least favorite, is actually fine. It's Woodstock Express at Kings Island. I think it's a cute ride. We each got our own row because it's so small with the buzz bars. Has some nice drops. It's just when the bottom 2 were easy, this one's just kind of okay. Though for me, Snoopy Soapbox Racers isn't that far ahead of this one. It was a little better. It was a little smoother. Number 2, worst, Demon. Oh my gosh, it hurts so much. Like literally, it has the over the shoulder. It reminds me so much of a better themed Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis. But this time, Ninja, I feel like just gets you on the corkscrews where your head slam into the restraints. Whereas Demon, the 2 loops you do at the beginning already hurt. And then you do a few turns and drops. And then you get to those corkscrews and you're like, please just let me off this thing. And I feel like the theming is cool. I like it. I think it's a good part of the park. I just not expect it to be that rough. The worst was the Boomerang at Six Flags St. Louis, which again, you go through the front loops. It's like one of those where you back up first, then you do 3 loops or 3 inversions, and those are fine. And then you go through them backwards, and the backwards portion gives you a headache and you slam your head against it. And it's like, Vekoma Boomerangs are known as being one of the worst models of any type of coaster, and I have to agree. Okay, let's go to positive. Top 5 new things I experienced. Number 5, Flight of Fear. Like I mentioned, love the indoor theming. I love indoor attractions, period. And I said Kings Island only had 1. They've got 2 indoor attractions, obviously, because they have Flight of Fear. Also, when I talked about that Great America, I am not counting the really well-themed teacup ride, Chubasco, as an indoor attraction, because it's not like air conditioned and dark and everything in there, but that is it's like basically a teacup style ride in a giant themed Spanish mission that, think about it, looks kind of like the Alamo. I mean, from the outside, not from the inside, but that's really cool, but does not count as an indoor ride. But Flight of Fear, I thought the launch was thrilling. I love launch coasters, and I just loved every part of it. I mean, there's even a weird part in the middle where you stop, which I think maybe at some point when it was the outer limits, something happened there. I found that funny, and then you go and do more, but it was really cool. Also, I'm going to say my big omission that I did not get to do again was Max Force, which I should have done when I went in June 2022, because this summer it's been closed all the time. It's a launch coaster that every time I walked by and saw the sign, I was sad about. I knew it probably wasn't going to be open when we were there, but it still made me sad. Number 4 is Prowler, which is a really cool wooden coaster. People call it like Mystic Timbers Light, which I understand is a little rougher than Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, but has a lot of cool elements, takes you out into the woods. And this is one that actually people raved about so much that I thought would be my favorite coaster at Worlds of Fun. It was actually the 3rd favorite of the 3 that we did, the 3 big ones. Number 3 is Mamba, which is an awesome Morgan Hypercoaster. I say Morgan because B&M is the hypercoaster for Diamondback and Raging Bull, two of the other ones I talked about. So Mamba is different, but it goes over 200 feet and it's insane. Super smooth for a ride that is as old as it is. There's a spot where you think there's going to be a brake run, and it doesn't stop and it just keeps going. And it feels so unhinged. There's like 5 airtime hills in a row at the end. The airtime is off the charts. Mamba is one that enthusiasts should talk about a lot more. It's awesome. And the fact that it's only number 3, I easily could make an argument it was my favorite thing that I did this summer. Number 2, Wrath of Rakshasa, the B&M dive coaster. First one I've done, and has a bunch of inversions. Was the front at least was super smooth. I had heard the back is really rough and has kind of the typical new B&M rattle, but riding it in front, riding a ride like that I've never done, first ride of the day on that Monday at Great America, our second day, and just blown away by it. I thought it was cool. Now, we'll be interesting to see when I do another dive coaster. Maybe I will push this down a little bit in terms of the new coasters or, in terms of how I would rank it. But as the only one, I found it really fun. Number 1, Zambezi Zinger. This was a real surprise. Zambezi Zinger is a coaster that was originally at Worlds of Fun years ago, was moved to the country of Colombia. And some people went and rode it on a trip. Coaster Studios and Coaster 365 and others did, which I think is really funny. But no, this is a new coaster that was put in that has some callbacks to it, especially the spiral lift hill, a la the Whizzer also has that. This spiral lift hill has been enclosed and is really loud and kind of painful, but the rest of it is so fun. The restraints are a little uncomfortable, especially if you're a man. Be careful with that. There's a lot of fun elements. There's also It was a little themey. You got some animals. You do this big helix around a rhino. They're all stationary. There's a lion. But I found this to be so much fun and thrilling, more than I expected. A little less thrilling maybe than Prowler, but much smoother, and one that I wanted to get on again, but it also has really slow operations. So that one had a long line. Even with multiple trains, you would find the trains backing up and having to wait because it took them a while to get them loaded. And just a blast to do. Zambezi Zinger. Go to Worlds of Fun and ride those top 3 coasters, because even the things I said where I didn't think it was perfect, those top 3 coasters are legit. And that park could do better with staffing and ops. Really just better with staffing and having more food places open. It's a real gem, and I've heard people rave about it, and I think hitting on one of the hottest days of the year is not great, but I would consider going back again, especially with my brother living there. There's a lot to like, and I would like to explore a lot more, including a bird show in the African area. I would love to see that. I'd love to just go, get a coffee on a cooler day and just sit in the Africa area and feel like I'm at Disney's Animal Kingdom. That's what I would like to do. I should also mention Disney made a few recent announcements. Since I started recording this last week, I had a tennis tournament in the middle, so we slowed down a little bit, in that they announced that their Zootopia show is opening in November. Okay, I don't have a strong opinion on that one. They also showed some concept art of the new Muppets retheme of Rock and Roller Coaster, which looks to be a scooter animatronic in the pre-show, which looks really awesome. Looking forward to that. They also showed the ride vehicles for Buzz Lightyear. Hey, it's needed an upgrade for a while, so I think that's cool. Another really neat thing, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad with a rainbow cavern scene. I was hoping when they retracked it that they might do some enhancement to it. I was thinking more in terms of like the Disneyland with the visual effects on the last lift hill. This looks like it's going to be really cool. And I appreciate more of this, Disney. You want to inspire me, make me want to go there? More things like this. Go beyond what I expect, not just what I expect. So that's going to do it. I just got to say, it's been really fun to kind of put on my Tomorrow Society podcast hat again and just kind of have fun with it and do it. It's been such a blast to do, and I hope you enjoy this. If you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing, lately I've just been mostly doing my Amazing Race Canada podcast, which I do for Rob as a Podcast with Jessica Leese. We recap every episode of the Amazing Race Canada. We've been doing it for more than 10 years, going back to season 3. We're also on YouTube. If you want to see what I look like when I'm doing podcasts, you can go on there. Just search for Amazing Race Canada, Rob as a Podcast, or We Know Reality TV, and you'll find it there. You can also follow me. I'm mostly just on Blue Sky at the Dan Heaton or on Instagram, though I don't post there that often. And I'm still putting transcripts up from the past Tomorrow Society podcast interviews with Imagineers. Go to tomorrowsociety.com/podcast with an S at the end, and you can see I have a little asterisk next to all the ones that have transcripts. That continues. These are also custom, where I go through them and make sure to the best of my ability that they are accurate. These are not the typical ones you're going to see on Spotify. It's a much higher level than those. You can still buy me a Dole Whip. I have it out there. No pressure at all. This is really just, that's tomorrowsociety.com/Dole Whip. But really, I'm doing this just to have fun, to jump in and to say hi and just talk about what I've been doing. I hope you notice. I would love to hear what you think. You can leave comments on individual episodes on Spotify, or you can send me an email, dan@tomorrowsociety.com, or you can just, enjoy it. I just hope you enjoy listening to me talk about theme parks, because I love doing it and what I've been doing. And just, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Six Flags. I hope they don't close St. Louis, and what's of course happening. I want to get to Disney next year. That's my goal, and whether it's Disneyland or World, we'll still see, but I would like to do that, and of course eventually get to Epic Universe. Take care out there. I hope you enjoyed this return bonus for Tomorrow's Society podcast. Unsure when I'll be back next time, but also just enjoy chatting with you guys. Thanks so much out there, and I'll talk to you again sometime in the future, hopefully very soon.